So the first thing I just want to talk about, just before we even look at anything, is just again for those of you, just what is Advanced Edition? What does it go on? All just those kind of questions and stuff. So Advanced Edition is a paid upgrade for TriCaster Mini 410, 460, 860, and 8000. It is not included standard with any model TriCaster. So if you buy a TriCaster, or your client, I guess, buys a TriCaster, they're just going to get the standard revision of software on it, which is Rev 2-4. Advanced Edition is a paid upgrade that you can put on any of those models, and it'll add approximately 60 some new features to them. Some of them are actually TriCaster 8000 features that have worked their way down to other models, and some of them are brand new features that you wouldn't have, even on an 8000 you wouldn't have. So everybody, no matter what model TriCaster you have, does gain new functionality. One question I know people have asked is, why didn't we just include it standard? And the main reason is that we felt TriCaster already included a huge amount of functionality out of the box with the standard version of software. So instead of coming out with new models, or increasing the price for a new upgrade and stuff like that, when not necessarily everybody wants it, although we certainly hope people will, we made it an option. So that way you just sell the standard model that you've already been selling, the capabilities it has, but there's an ability to move up for more capabilities. The last thing I'm just going to throw out there, because I don't think we've really made a big point of this, is what about the current version of software? What's happening to that? Is it dead or what? And the answer is really that the current version of software is still going to be supported. There'll still be bug fixes and patches and stuff for it. But anybody buying a TriCaster who doesn't get Advanced Edition, they should not expect new features. So the standard version of software, the features that are in it are what it's going to have. All right, there's not going to be new things added to it. If clients want new stuff as time goes on, they should be buying Advanced Edition, because that's where new stuff is going to happen. And I expect soon you'll probably see some of that new stuff starting to happen. So it's not just getting Advanced Edition for what it is today, which, to be honest, is a huge amount of functionality for $1,500, but you're also getting it for what more we're going to add to it as time goes on. So that's where all the development goes on to. But again, anybody who buys a current system without Advanced Edition, they're still going to be supported. They're still going to get patches and bug fixes and stuff. So it's not like they'll never see another update to it. But again, they're not going to be feature updates. They're just going to be patches and those kind of things. All right. So let me switch over here, and everybody should be seeing my TriCaster 8000 desktop here. I'm going to be showing everything on an 8000 so that I can show everything. Be honest, there's still only a few things the 8000 has at this point now. They're big features, but that the other models don't have. So if any of those come up, I'll certainly point them out as an 8000 only feature. But as you'll find out, almost everything I'm talking about here applies across the board to all model TriCasters. So let's start with some of the switcher effect features. One of the first ones there, it's a little one, but a good one. Up in the corner over here, we have added an undo function in here. So if you were to, let's say go into an ME, and let's say I went to ME1 in here, and then I went to go edit that, and I selected something, and I realized I just changed the wrong ME, I can just come over here and click undo and set it back to where I was in there. So it just makes it easy to kind of get back to a previous state when maybe you weren't paying attention to what you did previously in there. So undo, redo, it is multiple levels in here in the system. We've also enhanced our MEs. So let's take a look at that in here. So the MEs now, I'm just going to go to one that I don't believe I'm using. All right, we'll just use ME4. It used to be that you had to choose mix or effect mode. Now, all you have to do is load in whatever you want. If you load in a transition, it becomes a mix mode. If you load in a live set or any other kind of element in here, it becomes a effect mode. So you no longer have to make that choice ahead of time. You just load in what you want, and it automatically becomes that. So if I was to go load a virtual set in here, let's say the demo studio, something else. How about the arena report in here? Select one. Hit OK, you can see it automatically just loads that. And now if I go and I load something else like a transition in here, let's say we'll load a expand effect in here, you can see it switches to that. So I no longer have to switch that, which makes it a little bit quicker to move around because you're not having to switch an extra thing to get you in the right mode to begin with. It automatically does it as you go along. Another really nice enhancement is when it comes to the keyers. Now, of course, on an 8000, you get 4 keyers, but it used to be that on all the other models, you only got 1 keyer inside an ME. You now get 2 keyers inside every ME on a Mini up through an 860. So where you see key 1, key 2, key 3, key 4 in mine, again, on those other models, you had a key 1 before, you now get a key 2. So that gives you a whole additional layer that you can work with inside your MEs for additional overlays or putting additional video channels on there. So that's a really nice enhancement. And to go along with these, we also have augmented reality features added into the MEs. So let me, I'm going to switch to the output here so you can see this a little bit better. So you can see that I have this ME, and I'm just going to start it off as normal here, and I can zoom around in my ME, just like you always normally could. But let's say I wanted to put a logo on the front of that desk. So I've got a graphic here, which is my NewTek logo. Now, previously, I would have had to buy Virtual Set Editor to put a logo on the front of this desk. With the augmented reality features now, you can see I can actually stick that logo right on the desk. So as it moves around, that logo stays with it. So that's one of the new features with the augmented reality, but we can also go a little further than that. So here I've got, we have 2 key keys. I know that kind of is bending space-time in there to have 2 on the screen at once, but if I move around now, you'll see that not only is she moving still, but she's actually moving at a slightly different rate. And let me show you a little bit better here. I'm going to slide over, and you'll see that as the camera pans over, she slides in like she's closer to the camera than what's in the background. And if I slide back out, you see slides to the side a little bit there. So that is the augmented reality feature, and that can be found in any of the keyers. If you go in here, there's an augmented reality option that you can turn on. And when it's set to 0, that will give you like what my logo was on the desk, where it's stuck right on there and it moves along with it. But if you add a parallax, you're then basically adjusting how close to the camera you want an object to be as it moves. And the more parallax you give it, the more offset it will have. So this will allow you to create very nice effects where you can say have like multiple people in a set, but it doesn't look like they're all necessarily standing in the same plane away from the camera. Or you could put graphics and logos and make it look like they're more in front of the person if you wanted to for those kind of effects. So that's another big enhancement. Another new feature we've also added is, whoops, I've got them all on, I didn't mean to, is borders. So let me switch over here, and I'm going to again go to the output. So we can now put borders on our object. So I'm just going to go in here, and on this first one, I don't have anything on. I'm going to turn it on, and borders also do include drop shadows. I know it's a little hard to see on this one, but there is a slight drop shadow on it. But I can create my own borders, and they could be as wacky or as wild as you want. Or I can have borders for other things as well. And there's borders that come in the system. You can build your own borders in Photoshop. And these get stuck onto the keyer, so they'll move and everything with them with transitions and stuff. So now if you need borders, or what I feel is probably more importantly, drop shadows, added to any of your upstream or downstream keyers, that is something you can now do very easily with Advanced Edition. One last new feature is Effect View when it comes to the switcher. Now this is a TriCaster 8000 only feature, so you will not find this on any of the other models. Effect View is this little option at the top in here, and if you click this on, what it does is it puts your preview monitor into a special mode. And at this point, anything you do with any of these controls only happen in the preview monitor. They will not happen on program out. So if I was to go in here and say, hey, let's see what it looks like if I was to transition with this transition right here to video layer, to camera 2, I can hit auto and I can see it happen in my preview window. But again, it does not happen on program. So this allows your operator to go in, try things, see what a full motion everything's going to look like with bringing in keyers, transitions, swapping them out, but having no effect on the background. When you're done, you can turn this off, and everything goes back to the way it was. So nothing I've done has messed anything up. It just gave me a chance to try something. Or when you have it on, there's also a take or an auto, and that does give you the ability that if you need to switch to whatever was going on in this window, you could hit this. So like, hey, I realized, hey, I need to get myself on program out. I can just hit auto, and you'll see it will switch me over to program out in there. So again, that is a TriCaster 8000 only feature, the effect view, the ability to fully preview. It's kind of like look ahead preview, except with full capabilities in it, not just, only showing me something. Here I can actually try things and see what they look like. All right, so that's some of the new features you find in the switcher and the effects system. But let's take a look at a few other areas inside the TriCaster and see what Advanced Edition adds in there. So another area that's been enhanced is the DDRs. And so I'm going to go down here and let's just go to a new DDR and open it up and throw some clips in here. All right. So just like anything else, I can throw the clips in here, but here's what's been changed in here. We now have the ability to add transitions inside the DDR. So if I just go to add, let's say I want to add a transition between the balloon and the bumper cars, I can select the balloon one, hit the plus button, and you'll notice that in my media browser window, not only do I see clips and stills and everything I normally see, but if I scroll down, I see all the different types of transitions as well. So let's say I want to do, let's do a full broadcast style one. Let's do the, I don't know, let's do the photograph one. So I can load that one in there, and you can see now the photograph transition will happen from this shot to that shot. And let's do one more for the next one in here. So we'll add in another one. And for that one, we'll add in my favorite, the falling sheep. All right, so now if I want to play these back, make sure we're in play mode, and I'm going to, again, switch over to the output and put the DDR one on there. There we go. And we'll hit play, and you'll see there's my balloon shot playing back. Just so the audio's not getting in the way, I'm going to bring it down there. And then you'll see it transition over to the bumper cars, and then in a few seconds, that will transition to the falling sheep effect. So that gives you a little bit of an idea what the transitions features in there. The nice thing with this is that you are not limited to using the same transitions that are inside the transition palette up here. You can put any transitions you want, and as each one of these clips play, it's loading up the next transition. So you could literally make one of these with 100 clips in here using 100 different transitions, and it'll all play out because as it plays each clip, it loads the next transition up, and then onto the next one in there. So that's some of the new functionality. Some other stuff we've also added into the DDRs is we've added some more editing-like features in here. So you'll notice that I can go in here and I can scrub this and I can mark ins and outs like it could always before. But some new things we can also do is I can also split a clip in here. So if I go right-click on it, there's also a keyboard shortcut for this. I can split that clip. So now this clip plays to the point where I split it, and then this clip picks up from that point on. All right. And beyond that, then, we can also apply speed changes on a clip-per-clip basis. So if I wanted to play this London bus, and I'll show this to you here, it's going to start at 100%, and then it's going to, with my speed change to 50% in there. So I'll hit play. There it plays out at 100, and then there it hit its 50%. So now if you wanted to do effects like that, which again, some editing type of functionality, you can load in clips, you can split them, speed change, transitions. Again, it's not necessary to replace a full nonlinear editor, but it certainly gets you a lot closer in having some of those editing-like features when you start adding speed changes and transitions and the ability to really edit these clips a little bit more than you've ever had in there. All right. Another big new feature found in TriCaster Advanced Edition is the automation functionality. So automation has been added into a few different areas, and I'll just kind of show you where there are and explain how this works. So the first area is in all the sources. So now every source has an automation functionality built into it. So if I, let's just say, go to camera 3, and in this window that opens in here, and here I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little bit better here, you'll see that I've got a panel and there's an automation tab in here, and at the top are 8 different automation functions in there. All right, so these allow macros to be triggered if any of these functions should happen inside the system. So the way to think about this in a kind of an older sense is that it used to be to do live video production, you had to have all these different pieces of gear, and they were all separate. And sometimes you had like GPI triggers you could use to trigger one device to another and make some kind of, something a little more automatic than it used to be. This is like building that right inside the TriCaster itself. Since all the functionality is built into the TriCaster, we have now added in so that different modules of this TriCaster can trigger each other. So I could, for example, say when this camera 2 goes to the program row, I can have it trigger a macro when it happens and another macro when it comes back off. And I could do another one for when anything goes to a keyer. So a very useful thing we could do for that, for example, is you could make it that when the lower third title comes up for somebody on a keyer, you could make a macro that says, hey, when that goes on, wait 10 seconds, then bring it back off automatically. So all your lower thirds, any lower third that was used in that particular downstream keyer would automatically take itself off when you click it on. You don't have to actually do that second step in there. So it just makes it a little bit easier. So that's one area you can do this in, is the sources. There are also automations built into all the clips inside your DDRs or your media players. So when a clip starts or a clip stops, you have the ability to trigger macros in those cases as well. So that's another new functionality. And then there's also automation built into the audio mixer. And so if I go in under, there it is, go to my audio source, and under automation, there's, our audio follow video, which we've had, but you see there's another one that says now run macro at, and you can set a threshold. And then again, you can have one when the threshold is reached and you go above it, and another one reached or another one trigger when the threshold goes below in there. So this gives you some ability to do, and I don't want to, I'll just be straight for you, I don't want to oversell it on the audio side, but does give you some ability to do a very basic audio video follow audio type functionality, where you could literally say that, hey, when this microphone goes active, switch to it. And then let's say it doesn't, or it goes back down, maybe go back to the wide shot. And that way, if you had a couple people and they're all at mics, they could all talk and it would switch to them. The only caveat I'm going to throw in there is that if they're talking on top of each other, that's going to be problematic because there is no intelligence built into this. You can't say, hey, if 3 of them are active, then do this other thing or something. But if it was very simple, this person talking, then we go to camera 2 and he talks, and we go back to camera 3 and they talk, and back to camera 1, you could certainly build macros that would automatically switch the switcher as each person talks into their microphone, which would be kind of cool. So automation could be a big feature in there. That also really plays well if you start getting into some of the other functionalities that you've been able to do in TriCaster already, like GPI. You've been able to add a GPI JL Cooper box. Automation works great for that, because now you could say, hey, when camera 7 goes active, goes to program, send out a GPI trigger to whatever that remote device is. Maybe it's a media player, and it could trigger it to play, and then when you take it off air, it could send out another GPI to tell it to stop. So again, that used to be stuff that you could do. You had to do it through macros, and you still had to trigger those macros yourself. Now you could have those macros triggered automatically when the event inside the switcher occurs that you would want that macro to run. So that can be actually a very powerful tool once you use it in the way it's intended. All right, another new feature in here is data link. Data link is a functionality that we've actually had in live text for quite a while. That has now been moved inside of TriCaster. It does all the same stuff that the live text data link can do. So scoreboard integration, RSS feeds, text files, database SQL support is all in there as well, and you can use that. But it has been enhanced beyond that in TriCaster. There are new ones that you didn't have before, including be able to read comma-separated values. So you could bring in a chart of information if you wanted to, which you couldn't do before. But there's also some built-in stuff that's very cool. So let me just show you some of those in here. So the first is there are internal data link sources built right into TriCaster now. You'll notice that in a lot of areas, so for example, if I right-click on this lion clip in my DDR and go to Properties, you'll see that there's not only the name, but there's a comment in here. So let me put in a comment. All right, so we're going to say the lion at the MGM Grand, and I can now use that information that you see right in here. I can use that as data link sources in other parts of the system. So let's take a look at that. So in buffer 5, I'm going to put this on the air in here. You can see it says line in there already, but I'm going to go in here and change this a little bit. This title has some data link fields in it. So the first one, DDR clip alias, you can see I've got that in there. But if I click on another one and I just type in %, all right, this will give me a list of all the data link fields that are available in the system. So I could go in here and find the other ones I'm looking for, or even start to type it. So if I knew this was with a DDR, I could just start typing DDR and it will show me everything that matches DDR. So let's put the comment in here. And now that I've updated this title with these two data link fields, clip alias and clip comment, you can see that in my title up here, it has the name of the clip, which is lion in the first line. And then if you recall, when I put in my comment at the MGM Grand in there, that is shown up on the second line in there. And so as I click through the clips, now I've not put comments on the other ones in here, but let's do that on one more. Let's say the London bus, and we'll put a little comment in here. Platform 9 3/4, if I can type. And there you have titles that update automatically for whatever clip is loaded in the DDR. This can be done on sources as well. So you could right-click on a video source in here, go to Properties, and put a comment in here as well. So that would allow you, let's say you've got 3 different people on 3 different cameras, you could assign on each camera the name of the person, and then as you bring that camera up, it would automatically update that data link field, and then you could have that displayed if you wanted to. So that's just another way to be used. But then another method we also have is that there is a plugin available for Chrome, and that can be used for data links. So let me show you that as well. So I'm going to go edit this London bus here once more. Again, or well, not the London bus, but the title. So let's change this to, if you start typing in web, we'll say web key 1 for the top one, and we'll say web key 2 for the second one. All right. And you can see my title is empty right now because I've not entered any web keys in there. But let's go take a look here, and I'm going to, we're going to put you a little side-by-side mode, and I'm going to jump into Chrome. Whoops. If I can click on the right button in here. There we go. So you should see my Chrome web browser on one side of the screen, and you see the output of the TriCaster on the other side of the screen. I can go in here now and right-click, or well, left-click on some text. So let's just say brush up your interviewing skills with tips from Sarah Green. That works well. Right-click on this, and I can send this to my TriCaster to one of those web keys. So let's send that to web key 1, and it's a little big, but you can see it fits on there. And let's say I want to update the graphic in there. I can right-click in there and send that to one of my web keys as well. So there you can see it. I even put my text in there. We'll just pick some smaller. I didn't pick a very good title for this. You can build titles where the text word wraps and stuff. I just happen to pick one that doesn't do that. But as you can see, I can actually take now anything that is in a web browser, and I can now send that into these web keys. So I could build little tweet boxes with the graphic and the different labels that I want in there, and then somebody running on a separate computer could be highlighting the text and the graphics they want and sending those into the TriCaster right over the network. So that's kind of a pretty cool new data link feature that we have in the system as well now. That is in there. Let's see here. Audio. There's been some enhancements into audio in here. We already saw the audio automation, but there is more beyond that as well. So one of the other big things that have been added is Dante audio support. Actually, let me do this not on one that I'm using so I don't change something. So You'll see in here we've got all the built-in stuff, but Dante is also in the list. And when Dante is selected, you can choose which pair of Dante audio channels that you want to use. Now, just a couple quick things on Dante, if you're not very familiar with it, or just so you understand how Dante is implemented. Dante support has been added into TriCaster Advanced Edition. Okay, you still have to purchase the Dante virtual sound card software and install it on your TriCaster. It's not very expensive. I think it's like $30 or so. But just realize that Dante support has been added, but the Dante protocol itself has not been. You still have to go to Dante or the Audinate website, purchase that, install that. When you do, then the Dante will be selectable. You will see it in the list if you don't even have it installed, but it will be ghosted out and you can't select it. Once it is installed, you'll be able to select it, and then you can choose which pair of audio. Now, in Dante, there is an external application you run that allows you to configure how all the audio routing works between all your Dante devices. So all you do in here is you just pick what you've set up in that Dante software as the destination. You say, hey, this, camera or source that has Dante coming out here, I want this to come in on my TriCaster inputs 3 and 4. So, and let's say that's what I want here. I would just say Dante 3 and 4, and then I'd be receiving that audio in there. Our outputs do function as Dante outputs. They're just automatically set up. So again, it's Dante in and out. You just have to add the Dante plugin. I do, just because some people also then think that this is the same way in TalkShow. TalkShow, just for the reference, includes Dante and includes the Dante protocol built into it. So the TalkShow system, you're ready to go out of the box with Dante everything. Here, you install Advanced Edition, you get the Dante support, you just have to add the Dante plugin, and then that will be available to you. So that's another big new feature in here. We're starting to see more and more people move towards audio IP workflows, and Dante is becoming by far the big player for that because they're open. There's hundreds of companies that make Dante-enabled devices out there, and now your TriCaster and TalkShow can be one of them. Noise gate is another new feature, and I'm actually using that right now in my with what's going on in here. So under processing, you can see there's a noise gate feature in here, and you can set a threshold, and with that threshold level, it basically automatically will mute anything below that. So in my setup here, I happen to have my TriCaster pretty much right next to me, so you might actually hear some fan noise and stuff while I'm talking, but when I'm quiet, you should hear that it's completely quiet because the noise gate is muting my lav mic that I'm wearing right now. So this is really great if you've got an open mic where people are going to be coming up and talking. You can have a noise gate set on it so that when they come up and talk, you hear them, but then, when nobody's there, it just automatically mutes itself. It actually works really well. I was very impressed with how well the noise gate's working on here. My worry is that it'd be clipping off the beginning or end of me talking or something like that. And my experience has been that it does not do that at all. In fact, you're hearing it right now. And I realize we're going through go to training, and that might, adds its own level of audio processing on it. But I think for the most part, you're probably hearing me pretty well. One other change, and this is not anything I can show in the interface, but it's just something to be aware of in the system, is that the master and aux audio physical analog outputs on the back of the units are now locked. And a lot of people actually kind of thought this was the way it was, but it wasn't. So what that means now is that when you look on the back of your TriCaster and you are, you've got your analog master and your analog, auxiliary audio outputs, they used to follow whatever settings you had set up in your output configuration window. So if you set up both outputs, output 1 and output 2, as master audio out, you were getting master out of both of those. And a lot of people, wanted master out of the first and auxiliary out of the second, regardless of how my audio settings were. And so now TriCaster Advanced Edition actually works that way. So just in some ways, it seems like you've taken something out because before it was configurable and now it's not. But actually, in many ways, it now works the way people expected it always to have worked. And the nice thing now is you can plug in your sources. and they're always going to be that. So even if you go change the output configuration window, you don't have to worry about it changing those analog outputs. You're still always going to get master out of master and aux out of aux, regardless of how anything else is set up in there. And that's actually a very nice addition in there. Okay. On to import and publishing. Another area that's changed in TriCaster Advanced Edition is how to import and export material. They've actually been, all of this has been brought into the live desktop interface now. So it used to be that, you had to import, at least if you wanted to use the import tool, you did that before the live desktop ran. And if something occurred during your show, you had to kind of like work your way behind the scenes to, open an Explorer window like through a DDR or something and copy those files or whatever you needed to do. It was not as elegant as maybe you could want. And publishing was another area where if you didn't set up your publishing sources correctly before you started your session, if the session is started and your event's going, you had no ability to change it. You were locked with what was already set. All of that has changed now. So import has been moved into the live desktop. It is completely integrated now. So if I just go in here and I go to File menu, and just so you can see this a little better, you can see in the File menu, I've got Import Media in here, and we can select that. And this opens up an import window very much like you saw, externally. We go add our clips, find what we want, browse, go find something in here. So let's say I want to import my Revolution video. This is across the network in here. And then I can hit import and you'll see it's now importing that. Now you might be like, oh great, I got to sit here and wait for it to import. But no, you can hit close, and while you continue to operate the system, that importing is happening in the background. So if I go back here and take a look, you'll see that that's a little further than it was before in there. So you don't have to stop. And the beauty of using this tool is that one of the issues people ran into in the past was they would try to pull or push stuff into the TriCaster over the network while live was going on, and it didn't work very well. All right, the system would get sluggish, performance would drop. Main reason for that is that when anything would push data in, or basically was pushing stuff in through the network, Windows by default would try to do that action as fast as it possibly can. And while bandwidth was part of the issue, it actually really what it came down to, a lot of it is that it was all the interrupts that the network card would be throwing into the system, where it'd say, hey, I got more data, and Windows is trying to, alleviate that because data's coming in, it's got to do something with it. And that took away from the performance TriCaster wanted to have because it wants to be doing stuff. So when you use the file import, this is all controlled import. We pull at a rate that, I'll be honest, it's going to be a little bit slower. All right, it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to pull at a rate that's not going to cause those problems. You can now import a file in the background, and the system's not going to suffer performance-wise for it. It also has built-in transcoding. You don't even have to pick it. I know before there was a little option you could use. Excuse me. But with the new import, if the media needs to be transcoded, it does it automatically. And if it doesn't, it just does a file copy. So you just pick your files, hit import, and it just happens automatically. And then you can just hit close, continue working while those files import in the background. So that's really nice how that's been implemented, but it's all been moved into live desktop. So you can now access it anytime. Publishing has also been changed. So there was always a publish button, but all the controls for setting up publishing were outside live. You had to do that before you got into the live desktop. Now you can set up all your presets inside the session. So I can go in here and again, we'll kind of zoom in so you can see it a little better. So I can set up ones for Facebook, FTP. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if all of these are in public releases yet. LinkedIn, I might be there, I'm not sure. Transcode, Twitter, Vimeo. Again, I don't know if that's in a public release. I'm running a beta right now. And YouTube. So anyways, you might be seeing what's coming soon if these aren't available already. Vimeo and LinkedIn they're working on. And so these are all destinations you can set up. And the beauty now, too, is you can also set up multiple destinations. So it used to be I could only set up one Facebook or one FTP site. What if I wanted to send it to 2 FTP sites? You could do that now. I could go and set up one FTP site, name it, set it up with everything I want in there, and then I could set up a second one and have that in there as well. Another really nice enhancement in the publishing tool is that FTP and transcode, as it's called. Transcode used to be file copy, is what we called in the older version. Both of those have the ability to convert media in here. So I guess that one's already set up. Let me just do a new one. So we'll just say new preset. We'll say transcode. And you can see now I can name it and I can choose any of the transcode settings. So even while production's going on, I could be sending out clips to a remote system, and I can also now choose what format it is. So if I'm, let's say it's a sporting event, and these are highlights of instant replays, and I want to send them over to a Final Cut user, and he's going to be editing out something for the end of the show, and he wants some of the plays of the game, and this Final Cut user believes that ProRes is the only format in the world that's any good and will not accept anything else. Hey, no problem. I can just go to QuickTime and just say, send him ProRes 422 files. And when I publish to that location, what appears in there are going to be ProRes files that he could start working with. And he's happy. And all I have to do is just send him clips. So that's all been enhanced in the new publishing tool. The new publishing tool does also count as your export tool as well, just so you're aware. So if you exit out and you go to the export module, you're not going to see, or the manage module, I guess it used to be called, you're not going to see export in there anymore. You export right inside the publish tool. So again, the nice thing is you don't even have to ever leave live to publish clips out. You can do it right inside the system now. All right. Streaming. Another big area that's changed in TriCaster Advanced Edition is the streaming module. So let's take a little look at here. I'm going to zoom back up into the corner here. Click the gear for stream, and you see that it is a whole new menu that it drops down in here. So, first of all, we use an entirely new streaming engine. We are not you still have the option to use the old stuff, the Adobe Flash Live Media Encoder, or the plugins that were available, like for live stream. But by default, unless you go and pick one of those, you're going to use the new streaming engine. The new streaming engine is higher quality. It takes better advantage of bandwidth. So it used to be with the Adobe FMLE, even if you put higher bit rates, it really didn't increase your video quality that much because it's an old tool. This new one takes better advantage of that. You can also stream to multiple destinations now. That's another thing. So if you want to stream to Azure and Ustream simultaneously, you could do that. And the new streaming engine also supports up to 1080p, whereas before it maxed out at 720p. So let's just take a quick look at a few things in here. So when you click the gear, these are all presets that are in here, and you can remove these out, so you can only have the ones that you want in here. But down where it says new connection, and I'll just zoom in there again for you so you can see a little better. You can see here's all the current connections that are in here. Now, before it was one panel, the streaming panel, and you had to get whatever information from whatever system and adapt it into the Adobe FMLE or our streaming panel in there. I mean, once you knew how to do it, it wasn't hard, but these new streaming plugins in here are now adapted for every streaming CDN. So if I want to stream to Twitch, for example, I can just select Twitch TV, and it is set up to stream to Twitch. All I have to do is enter the relevant information, in this case, username, password, and select the system because it will communicate with it and get that information back. And then I can choose what format I want to stream in. And you can see way at the very bottom, move down here a little bit. You can see at the bottom in here, hopefully you can get to the bottom. Around a little more. There we go. You can see we've got 1920 by 1080 in there. You can build your own profiles. Again, you'd actually use the Adobe FMLE software to build the profiles, and you could browse for them and import them in. And even though they're built in the old Adobe software, all we're doing is we're pulling out the relevant information as for bit rate and frame size and all that kind of stuff, and then plugging that into the new streaming engine. So you don't have to learn how to program a whole new streaming engine to build your own profile. You just do it like you did, but when you bring that in, it automatically will take advantage of the new streaming engine, which is really nice. So we can set that up in there, and we've got ones in here just to kind of show through. We've got for Azure, Twitch, Ustream, YouTube, Wowza, a few others in there. There's also just a custom if you need to stream to an RTMP or RTSP source that does not have, maybe it's not in the list, but it has that information. you can just punch that information in and we could still stream to it. If you do need to stream to something previous, there's still the legacy mode in here, and this supports all the previous methods of streaming that we've had in there. So this would open up the Flash encoder that the older TriCasters use, or Windows Media, or one of the plugins like Livestream or the Ustream plugin. So we still have that backwards compatibility if you need it, but it's still limited to the same limitations, 720p maximum. Only one of these can be picked at a time. And in fact, if you click Legacy, you can't pick any of the other ones in there. So you'll notice, for example, I could switch stream to, let's say, Azure, Twitch, and Ustream, but if I go in there and say, hey, let's stream to Flash, now those other ones have turned themselves off and Flash is on. So it's one or the other, but if I'm using the new streaming engine, I can have multiple destinations now. Now, one last question that comes up if you stream to multiple destinations, just to let you know, is how much bandwidth does that need, or how much CPU power does that use? Because, I mean, that would be a lot if I'm going to stream to a bunch of destinations at once. Well, just so you know what actually happens when you stream to multiple destinations is that regardless of what resolutions you pick, so let's say I set this one to 720, and then I set another one to 1080 in here, all right? It's going to stream the highest bit rate. It's only going to do one encode, and it's going to encode at the highest bit rate between all three of those profiles, and that is the encode it will create. And then it will send that same encode to all of those destinations. So from a CPU bandwidth standpoint, that's very nice. It's only one encode regardless of what's going on. It only uses that much bandwidth or CPU power. But certainly when it comes to network bandwidth, at that point it needs as much as however many of those you have going on. So if I'm doing a 6 megabit streaming encode and I'm streaming to 3 locations, I need 18 megabits of upstream bandwidth to handle that, and plus a little bit extra really to handle overhead and just jitter and all that kind of stuff on the network. So you really want to have more than that, but you can do that if you've got the capability of doing that. So new streaming engine, all built in, just TriCaster Advanced Edition, would still fall back to the old streaming engine should you find for some reason you need to use it. All right, one of my personal new favorite features in TriCaster Advanced Edition is that it has more outputs. All right, now the number of outputs you have varies depending upon what model TriCaster you happen to be running. If you're running a 4RU, an 860 or 8000 system, you get 4 outputs. That includes the 3 SDI analog outputs and the HDMI number 4 output. All right, all 4 of those outputs can now be set up for completely different things on each and every one of them. So you'll notice that in my output panel, if I go over here, I can set up output 1 for program, output 2 for, let's say, a clean feed, output 3, maybe I want preview, and output 4 maybe is going to be ME1 in there. And they've all been set up. They're all outputting their own thing independently of each other. I can choose what audio that goes with them. And also notice that the first output still is locked to your session format, which is fine. That's generally what you want. But the other 3, or the additional outputs, do have an I shouldn't say up, a cross or down converter on them. So I could actually now output a program, a clean feed, and a program standard definition all at the same time if I wanted to from one system. Now, only the 860 and 8000 get 4 outputs. All right, if you're on a 410 or a 460, you get 3 outputs. All right, that's going to be the 2 outputs you already have, plus that HDMI output that's on the back of the TriCaster hardware. That third output becomes an additional output for you that, just like here, can be completely configured independently with cross conversion and stuff like that on there. A TriCaster Mini does not gain any additional output. So if you're on a TriCaster Mini, there's only 2 physical outputs on the unit, so you still only have access to 2 physical outputs on there. So this is a feature that, as you know, the higher end your TriCaster is, actually the more output capability that you gain. Now, these outputs are not limited to just live output. They can also be used for recording as well. And that kind of takes us into our next section here, which is recording. So if you look at our record panel, you can see our record panel has kind of been revamped here. There's a capture tab and a replay tab, and we'll talk about both of those for a second. But the capture tab pretty much has what we had before. You can go in there and add multiple destinations to record and drives and all that kind of stuff. But notice now that when I click on the output to record to an output, I've got output 1, 2, 3, and 4 in there that are all selectable destinations. So even if you don't want to physically hook up that output to something, you just want to use it as a way to record. And I just want to record a clean feed. I don't need to send the clean feed out anywhere. I just want to have that recorded. You could just send it to an output you're not using, and then be able to record that, and you'll have that additional record channel. So that's really powerful. The new extra output capabilities, along with being able to record that as well. To me, that's actually, in my opinion, the best new feature in here. And there's a lot of features I like, but the output stuff, I'm always happy with that one because I always find a use for it. Also looking at the record panel, you notice that replay has been added in here. Now, we've always had replay functionality built into the TriCaster, but you're going to find that with Advanced Edition, the replay functionality has been brought up to a whole nother level that we never had before. So let me give you a quick example of that here. And I'm going to set up a couple records. So let's set up, I'm going to record camera 1, and let's add one more. We're going to add camera 2 in there. Now, one other thing I just want to really quick point out, this is another thing people have asked for. I now, in the record panel, have the ability to choose which audio pair goes with each recording. Before, when I was recording a source 1 always recorded source 1's audio, and source 2 always recorded source 2's audio. And I mean, sometimes that's exactly what you want, and that's still what it defaults to. But sometimes maybe I only have one pair of audio coming in, and I want every source to record that same pair of audio. Or maybe I just want those sources to record the output. I mean, or something else. You can now, in the record panel, choose that. So that is all selectable, which is another really nice enhancement in here. But I'm gonna just record 2 cameras. I happen to have a camera right here that's directly in front of me, and then I've got another camera that's off to the side here, that's on this side. So you can see I've got two cameras slightly separated from each other that I can go between. All right, so we're going to go to a record panel. I've set it to record those 2, and let's talk about this, and then I'll show it to you here. So we can now, just like before, I can choose to choose where these records are going to go. So let's send them to DDR1 and our current playlist. So we'll open up a new playlist in here, and we can also choose a default clip duration. So in the previous versions of TriCaster, I could only, whenever I would do a 1-button mark, I'd always end up with a 5-second clip, and I could not adjust that. Okay, and generally 5 seconds is probably good for a lot of cases, but maybe not in all cases. Now you can see not only can I select it from this drop down, but I can also drag it or double click in there. So if I really want a 4-second clip duration, I can now type that in. So again, a 3-play-like functionality brought into TriCaster. 3Play's had this capability for quite a while. Now TriCaster has it. Another very nice enhancement is the play speed. This allows me to say when this clip is dropped into a DDR, automatically set it with this speed. So you can go in there and say, hey, all new clips that I create are going to be at 50% speed in there, ready to go. There's still an overall speed control in the DDR, but the nice thing now is I can leave that 100 and then just have it on a clip-by-clip basis, those be slow motion, which I think for a lot of people is a lot more straightforward in how to work with it, right? The clips that are slow motion are slow motion. Everything else I throw in the DDR that I want to play at normal speed plays at normal speed. And I don't have to deal with this, everything being affected by once and making sure I adjust it or jump between different playlists and stuff. It just does it for me, which is what I want. So we've got that all set. So I'm going to go in here and hit record. And so now it's recording my 2 cameras in here. And you'll notice that up in my record panel, there's a 1 and a 2 button up here. This is called my record pad. And what that does is I now have the ability to grab from any camera for a replay. All right, so I'm no longer limited to only my primary camera, which I was before. And then you were trying to use one record channel, maybe you routed an ME into it, and you were switching cameras, but of course, if it still wasn't the right camera, that's what you had. You were stuck with it, all right? That's no longer the case anymore. I can go in here and say, hey, I'm going to grab this camera in here that I'm pointing at right now, so I'll grab it. It's thrown it down there. There's my clip. So now let's go play back DDR1 and make sure everything else is all set here with autoplay. So when I go to autoplay this clip, you can see, whoops, I guess I should do a transition. I transition the clip. You can see the clip is now playing at 50% speed for 4 seconds. It's all been set up, and then it will transition back out when it's done, right? There you go, instant replay accomplished. But let's say I really like the other camera angle. I realized after the fact I picked the wrong record camera. I really wanted the other camera in there. Not a problem. You can come down to your clips in the DDR, right-click on it, and where it says angle, it will show you all the other camera capture angles that you're currently recording. So I could say, flip that to camera 1 now. And now let's play that replay back again. And so now I'm playing the instant replay from my other camera angle, and you're seeing it from that angle. This camera is actually a much better camera color-wise, as you can see. So there it is. So again, that's another 3Play-like functionality, the ability to go between different camera angles. Now, it doesn't allow me to change the camera angle live during playback. That's something only 3Play can do, but I could certainly switch to another camera angle, or I could even do stuff like this. I could duplicate this clip, so I could copy it and paste it. So I have 2 copies of it, and then I could say, make this one be angle 2, and so now, and make this one be angle 1. Yeah, there we go. So this one's on angle 1, that one's on angle 2. You can see as I select them here, they change up there, and you could easily now do a back-to-back different angles. But again, if you needed to switch angles live during playback, I just want you to be aware of that's a 3Play level functionality. So a lot more instant replay functionality has been added into TriCaster Advanced Edition. The ability to capture from any angle, set a 1-button marking length, switch those angles after they've been captured, set a preset replay speed. All of that stuff now makes it even easier. I don't want you to think that it doesn't necessarily mean that 3Play doesn't have a place. 3Play does things that you still can't do in here, and 3Play is still a dedicated, more powerful replay solution. But if we're talking a high school, we're talking maybe a smaller college, we're talking about a place that can't get a TriCaster and a 3Play immediately, this is going to give them still some fantastic replay capability, way better than it's ever been. And then, maybe they move up to that 3Play later when they want to take it to the next level in there. So that's all new stuff in the record panel that's been added in there. All right, let's see here. So the last thing I'm going to finish up with here, and we're doing good on time. I was shooting for about an hour or so to give us a half an hour plus or whatever time for questions and answers, is just some miscellaneous. These are things that don't necessarily fit into any one category, but they're just kind of sprinkled throughout the software that you'll find. So one of the first is router support. Now, TriCaster 8000's had router support in it for a while, but if you upgrade to Advanced Edition, you now get router support across the board on all of these models. Now, if you've never seen how a router works on a TriCaster, I'm going to just show you kind of quickly here how it operates, and there also have been some enhancements to it as well that go along with it. So I happen to have an AJA router, Kumo router on my system here. So if I right-click on my inputs, I happen to have inputs 1 through 5 on my system set up on the router. Inputs 6 through 8 are not connected to the router. All right, so if I click on any one of these, you'll see that they open up, and this little panel opens up below that shows me in this case, the 16 cross points on my AJA router. It even gets the names that I put in my AJA router, pulls those out and shows them in there. So I can go in there and say, hey, camera 4 is not showing me anything. So let's go to camera 4 and let's put my JVC camera on there. So when I select it, you'll see that in a second or so, there it is. Camera 4 has come on. It just told the router to switch that camera in. All right, and shows it. And if I want to switch, let's say, to my shuttle, which happens to be on input 3 in here, I can switch it to shuttle, and you'll see there it switched it over to my shuttle in there. So it gives me the ability basically to pull from a larger pool of sources and put them in there. I'll set it back to my talk show, which happens to be off right now, but that's what normally would be there. So that functionality has been extended to the other models. This works for Grass Valley capable routers, which is like what an AJA Kumo router shows up as, or Blackmagic routers. Either one of those would work. Now, beyond just router support being added on the other models, some other enhancements include the following. We now have auto detect SDI inputs. All right. So this works really nicely with the router support, because it used to be that, yeah, I could switch the router, But if the video format changed, I wouldn't see it until I went in and changed the video format to match what the router was now sending me. Because so I had 720 and 1080i mixture of equipment, yeah, I could route it, but I still had to make sure the inputs were right, so there was still dealing with that. Now with auto detect, I don't have to. I just, when it sees the source, it figures out what it is and automatically adapts to it. So that's a really nice enhancement for the router functionality that, you don't have to actually deal with that at all. You still have the ability to override if for whatever reason you needed to, or of course pick an analog input because this only works on SDI. But that's a new enhancement. Another new feature is we also have the ability to change the labels on the viewports to the router name. So if you right-click and configure one of these, I'm going to go to camera 1 in here. All right, we'll zoom up there. Whoops, and I go to rename. Where's it? Properties? No. Where's rename? Oh, I think it's down here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so move it down a little bit. So if you right-click on your buttons, you should be able to do up here as well. You can see there's an option that says use router name. So if I turn that on, then my viewport label will automatically be renamed to whatever my router source is. So let's do this on camera 3 or camera 4 because we're not using that one in here. So right-click. Properties, oops, did it again. Right-click, properties, use router name. All right, so you can see it says talk show right now because that's what it's expecting to be there, but I don't have the talk show's not on. But we're going to go in here and let's put this on my JVC camera. I'll select JVC. You can see now the label says JVC, and when I go back and change it back to my talk show, it changed back to talk show. So that's another new enhancement with the Advanced Edition is the ability to automatically have your viewport labels follow the names of your router inputs. Now, your router has to support mnemonics or labeling for this to operate. It's not something you actually punch in the TriCaster. You actually put it in your router. HA routers support it. I don't believe Blackmagic do, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure in some of the other ones, but you punch those names in, and if you see the names show up down here, it just doesn't say source 1, source 2, source 3, which is what you get if nothing is showing up, then you'd be able to take advantage of that. So that's a nice enhancement that's been put in there and something that people have asked for. All right. Another new feature in here, and this has been in 3Play, has now come to TriCaster Advanced Edition, is under the Color tab. We now have an auto color functionality. So again, if you're not familiar with this in 3Play, let me explain this a little bit. So let's say you're doing a live sporting event that's outdoors, all right? And maybe it starts in the afternoon, kind of goes in the evening, so the sun is changing, it's getting dimmer, the lights change on, it gets brighter. That's the kind of situation where you're typically, if you have a camera engineer or your camera people, they're kind of constantly tweaking the cameras to try to keep similar levels as the light conditions change. That's still the best way to do it. And I'm not saying that this tool is the replacement for that guy, but let's face it, a lot of places don't have that person, right? They just set up their cameras, they go, and they just deal with it for the entire event. That's where auto color comes in. So in those situations where you don't have the person or the employees that can do that, this is kind of a backup method to give you something like that functionality. So you can just turn this on, and what it tries to do is automatically set the whites to white and the blacks to black, and just as best it can give you the best image. Now, it's a computer. It doesn't necessarily know what the best image is, but it's based on its algorithm what it feels is best. And generally, it does a pretty good job. You still need to set up your cameras properly to begin with. This is not the magic fix-it button, and it takes a horrible image and makes it look good. This is to take a good image and try to keep it looking good, all right? And there's a difference there. It's not, if somebody just expects they click it and it's going to make, something that's black and murky and doesn't look, you can't see anything and it's going to make it fixed, that's not what they're going to do. They got to set up their camera to begin with, and then hopefully this should keep it similar to that after that point. Now, you can set this up on every input that you want. They don't all have to be on. You can also have cameras pool their multicam color information together. So that way, if you've got 3 cameras that are all pointing around, you can tell them to all aggregate their information and work together to try to produce the best auto color result. And that should also help keep all your cameras more locked in with each other if necessary. So there's a multicam option to turn that on. And also, let's say one of these cameras was a GoPro. It's a really low-end camera. It never started with good information to begin with because it doesn't have that kind of color control in it. You'd like it to receive the information if possible, but you really don't want its information to be adding in to everybody else's correction. There's also a listen only mode in here where you could say, hey, this camera receives information, but it doesn't add information in. So you see, actually, since this is the only camera I have it turned on, it's actually turned off, or it's not doing anything because it's not using its information. But that allows you to still have cameras that benefit, but aren't in any way maybe causing problems because they're just cameras that weren't a good source to use with. So this is a great feature again for outdoor events where lighting conditions change. That's really the main reason why 3Play got it first, but now it's in TriCaster as well. So now if you happen to have a current 3Play and current TriCaster, you could really take advantage of that feature fully because now both models can follow those auto color adjustments and keep a more consistent look throughout the entire live event. Also, in the ProCam controls, they've also been opened up with more controls than what we've had before. So again, just to zoom over there a little bit more. Before you'd only had, hue, brightness, contrast, and white balancing. Now you can see there's an advanced area with RGB, and you can adjust the red, green, and blue separately. So again, it's just more color control than what you've ever had before to really try to tweak those inputs. So that's in there. Another new feature, I'm just going to explain this one because it's not something I'm set up to show right now. But network tally is now fully implemented in TriCaster. So you can, if you have a 3Play or a talk show hooked up over the network, so in other words, coming into one of your net inputs on your unit, the tally will now function, and those systems will report the tally. They'll know when they're on air, so they'll tell you that information. And in the case of 3Play, can overlay a graphic on the return. On talk show, it will overlay a return graphic on the talk show return feed so that your remote user knows they're on air. And on 3Play, that can actually be used for auto queuing and playing of clips. So if you have your 3Play coming into a net input and there's a queue button in 3Play that, for the longest time people wondered, what in the world does this queue button do? It doesn't do anything. With Advanced Edition, it does something now. You turn queue on, and now in your 3Play, when you switch to it, if that's on, your 3Play will automatically play. Your operator doesn't even have to do anything. It just happens on its own. So that's a nice thing. And it will also highlight the windows in there to let you know that, hey, you're on air right now. So it's even if you're not using the queue button, the 3Play operator from his interface can see when he's actually on air running that replay and when he's just on preview or not even on anything in there, which is some nice functionality using the tally over the network. Some other things in here. Anim buffers have now come to the 410 and Mini with the TriCaster Advanced Edition. Anim buffers have always been available on the 460, 860, and the 8000. Now, 8000 is still the only model that gets 10 anim buffers. The other models will only get 5 anim buffers, but 410 and Mini used to get no anim buffers. They only had still buffers. So if you upgrade to a TriCaster Advanced Edition, your first 5 buffers become anim buffer capable. And again, if you're not familiar with what anim buffers can do, let me just quickly show you here. Anim buffers allow you to load specially designed animations. I'll just find one in here. How about we'll do a sports one in here. So these are frames of animation that are loaded into graphics card memory. So this is not using a DDR. It's not a spooling it off a disk. It's actually just playing out of memory. And I can go in here now and pick my buffer, bring it on air, and you can see, oh, I got a basketball on my head. But I can scale and everything else I can normally do. So now if I wanted to bring in a logo, an animated logo, or anything like that, an animated replay flag for instant replay, animated lower third titles, I could bring in my own animation and just put the text on top of some animation in there. You can do all of that with these anim buffers. And the beauty is I still have my 2 DDRs available for any other use. So this is, in my opinion, another very big feature, especially for Mini and 410 users, which didn't have it before, is getting these anim buffer support. Anim buffers can run in a loop. like you currently see where it's just, hey, it's like I'm spinning a basketball on my finger, spinning on a loop continuously, or let me find, I think I'm using buffer pen somewhere. So let me, I'll just load a new one in here. You can also do play once type ones in here. So if I bring this one on, you'll see that the zombie alert logo plays and it stops at the end. And then when I take it off, it resets itself. And when I play it, it sets a reset. So it can also be used for these play once kind of little stinger graphics. You know, you want to bring in something, play it, and then bring it off when you're done. They're great for that kind of stuff as well. So that is another enhancement. The last thing that I'm going to talk about, and then I'll unmute everybody and we'll open it up for questions, is developer stuff. All right, now I know not everybody here is probably a developer, but I want to talk just a little bit about this because this is another big area that Advanced Edition is going to increase in capabilities. NewTek has a developer network, and you know, there's lots of products that work even with current model TriCasters when it comes to our developer partners. But you're going to find that there's going to be more stuff coming out that's going to require Advanced Edition. And to be honest, one of the main reasons for that is Advanced Edition expands the SDK and the development capabilities for third-party developers. So, you know, the ability, you'll see more stuff coming out, and they'll just say it requires a TriCaster Advanced Edition. It's not necessarily that, you know, they wouldn't want to support the old stuff. It's just that they're taking advantage of capability that only exists in Advanced Edition. And I want to show you, this is a little bit from a me personal standpoint, a few examples of this as to what you can do with it, because I think this is pretty cool. Now, for those of you who don't know, one of the new things that have been added into Advanced Edition is what's called the HTTP development kit. This allows you to write your own web applications that can control the TriCaster. And I'm going to show you a few examples of these in a moment here. In fact, I just realized I didn't start up my the software here, so let me quickly do that. Click on the right thing. So you can, using this, write your own applications that run in a web browser. They can run on a PC or a Mac or an iPad or an Android tablet, virtually anything with a web browser, even a phone if you wanted them to, and they can control your TriCaster. And the beauty of this is that these applications have intelligence in them. They have programming, they have variables, if-then statements, looping, all the kind of things you need to make your programs be intelligent, so that when you click a button, the appropriate thing can happen based upon what needs to happen. Advanced Edition takes us further in that not only can I send commands to it, which, you know, I've always been able to do with the software development stuff, but with Advanced Edition, I can now get information back from the TriCaster. I can find out the states of how things are. Is a keyer on or off? What channel of video am I currently set to? What transition is currently loaded? I can even get video feeds from my sources and outputs in here. So this allows me to build even more capable applications that can follow along as the TriCaster does stuff, or, you know, get information and you know, hey, the end user just clicked this on the button, so my app needs to do this because that just happened. And even though the app itself, they didn't click the button, they did it in the TriCaster, it still can, you know, monitor what's going on. So this is very powerful new enhancements that are in here that, again, Advanced Edition makes capable. So I'm just going to, for a quick second here, show you just a few really quick examples of what this can do. So I'm going to switch back. I'm going to switch to my side-by-side. Actually, let me start. We'll just switch so you can see my laptop in here. Now, the first one I want to show is actually what I'm using to make this demo work. I'm actually wrote an app to control the TriCaster that I'm using for this demo. And you can see on my screen here, I've got different video windows showing me different things in here. And I can pick my different sources. So if I want to go back and show you my TriCaster, I can just click on it. And of course, for you, it just transitioned. For me, of course, I still see the screen, but I can come back. And these actually even update over time. You'll notice if I look down in this output window, and if I move in there, you'll see every few seconds it updates. I'm actually grabbing video and did it. So I needed a simple way to control my TriCaster while I did this presentation for you so that I'm not having to do all this kind of stuff, I basically built my own web app with my own controls with actually icon pictures that show the stuff going on, and I can just click on it and it shows me that stuff. So that's one example. Let me show you one other one in here, and I gotta open it up here really quick. And this is actually one that is available for download. So let's see here, open. What am I? I'm not even thinking right here. Open project. So, sorry, not that I want to be showing you coding, but, you know, gives you an idea of what's in there. So this is one that's a simple title tool I built. So I'm going to load this up, show it to you, and then I'll show it to you working inside the system here. I should have had this ready to go. Sorry about that. So we're going to start this up. And this will open up, in this case, Google Chrome, and you will see my web app run. It always takes a little time the first time you click it. Come on, there it goes. And I'm going to point it to my TriCaster. Normally, when I have this all set up and running, it will do this automatically on its own. But you can see it actually sees my TriCaster. My TriCaster, it even reports back the model number of my TriCaster. And I have two fields in here that I can then update information on. So I'm going to quickly, I'm going to go back to my TriCaster. Let's go to number 11 in here, and let's load a title in here. Let's use the high-tech title, and we'll load that one in there. And let's put buffer 11 on output. Buffer 11. All right, so there it is on output. And one quick thing. Why? Oh, because I changed that, didn't I? Put this back in the program. Sorry. All right. And so now I'm going to put it in the side-by-side mode. All right, so you can see, I know it's a little hard to see, but I've got my web app on one side. In fact, let's just go in here really quick, and I'll have my web app on one side. I click the right button. There we go. I'm going to type in my title here. We'll say Kane Peterson, New Tech Incorporated. All right, so you can see that's what I typed in. And all right, I'm going to put this back in side-by-side mode. And so now when I hit update in here, you're going to see the title on, the title in here, update. And in fact, back in my web app, it's actually going to show me the title that it's updated. It's going to come back with a picture of it. So I'm going to hit update. And now it says Kane Peterson. I don't know why it says, oh, there it goes, New Tech. And in my web app, you can see it now shows an image of what the title looks like. So I could have somebody with an iPad off to the side. Again, it's a very simple example. They could update a template in the TriCaster, hit update. It updates in the TriCaster, and they can see what the update looks like. Oh, did they have a typo? Does the font look good? Now, it's not as powerful as what you can do in the TriCaster itself, but again, it's a very simple, all somebody wants to do is just change what some text says on a title on another computer, and that's it. Nothing more than that. This would let them do that. So this is just one example. I've got another app that will control PTZ cameras, and one that does router control and other kinds of stuff in there. So this is just a kind of gives you an idea of some of the stuff you can do. And the last thing I'll just point out is that we do offer training in San Antonio. There are what are called New Tech Master Classes. I'm not sure when the next one is. I think it's in October, and it's not going to be on this subject, but there's two different subjects we currently do it on. But I've done 3 of them so far this year, where you can come down to New Tech, and I will show you how to do this, how to actually write the code to control your TriCaster using a web browser and HTTP and JavaScript. And so if you as a reseller, if you're thinking, hey, what can I do to, do more? I want to sell more to my clients. I want to give them more capabilities. I want to be able to say, hey, yeah, that functionality you want, it's not built in, but I can make it for you. This would let you do that. And you would then be able to offer things that you could charge to your clients and give them more capabilities, and they would come back to you because you did this for them. I can guarantee in the future. And I also will add out there is New Tech can do this for you as well. So if you look at this and say, wow, that's great. I don't have the time, whatever, but I'd still love that. You can always contact us. We do have people at New Tech that can write these apps. So you can talk to us. We can find out if it's something that's capable of being done, what the requirements are, and we can give you, an estimate. Here's how much it would cost to get that written. And then you can go back to your client and say, here it is. You want this custom functionality? We can do it for you, and here's how it will work. So I want to thank you all for coming out.